So hi everyone, my name is Nell and I'm a content writer here at ServiceRocket. I'm really excited to introduce our next segment for this meeting. It's a bit of an AMA with our amazing brand ambassador, Sika Henry. Sika is going to be joined by the equally amazing Jeff, where they'll both bring their experience and expertise in answering some wellness questions that we gathered from our Rocketeers. So super exciting. Before I pass it over, Sika, maybe you can tell us about your year and how you've been doing, and maybe you can tell us about the Zwift ride you're going to be doing tomorrow too.
Sure. So, hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on the call. It's been a while and I've raced a lot. I have done 3 half Ironmans since May. So I've done a lot, traveled a lot. I just did I did Ironman 70.3 Oregon 2 weeks ago. And it's been a struggle for me this year. It's my first year as a pro, and I feel like I'm kind of relearning a new sport. It's a lot different. I start earlier in the day. There are less athletes on the course. And unfortunately, our sport is about 70% men, 30% women, and the pro field is even smaller than that. So the pro field for the men is usually about triple our size. So if I get dropped, I'm kind of alone by myself out there for miles and miles. So I feel like this experience has actually made me a bit mentally stronger, surprisingly. At first, it was destroying me a bit, but it's been interesting, I guess, learning a new sport. And just when I did this last race, I got to line up with Miranda Carfrae, who is 4-time Ironman world champion. I'm like, here's just little old me. And I'm standing next to Olympians. In the race before that, her last name changed, Sarah True. She came in 4th in the Olympics. So it's been just insane for me to be lining up against these amazing athletes. I keep getting asked what's next, and my answer is nothing right now. I just want to recover and enjoy some downtime. I did register for a 100K ultra marathon later this year, so I'm looking forward into dabbling and trying something new. I like exploring new things instead of right now. I feel like I'm beating the dead horse, doing the same races and getting the same results. So the run is my favorite of the 3. So I'm looking forward to getting some mileage back in. And and I don't know if anybody is on the app Zwift. It's a virtual riding app. It's ZWIFT, and you can download it on your phone. If you have a trainer set up for your bike at home, if you join the app, you can look for Team Varlo. The ride starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'm actually leading the ride. And I'll be on the Zwift companion app where I actually get to text and chat with people while we ride.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So Jeff, I'll turn it over to you. I know you have some questions ready to go.
Sure do, Nell. Thanks for that. And by the way, Sika, it just so happens that our segment falls right in about the middle of our presentation, kind of like a halftime at a football game. So I hope your singing ability is also as good as your pro triathlete ability. I want to call upon that in a moment, or so. But no, seriously, folks, we've got some great questions that came in. Thanks to Nell. She pulled our team here on the wellness side, and a lot of people wanted to ask some fitness related questions. Sika, we got a lot of folks that do all kinds of things, from learning how to do all kinds of poses on a pole. I'm not sure what that's called, to ultra marathoners, ultra bikers, and all kinds of different sports, walkers, climbers, you bet. So we have definitely got an interest in our health. So with that in mind, we did come up with some questions for you. And one of them is right in line with what I was just talking about, wellness. And the first question is, in order to maintain a weekly wellness habit, what can you do? In other words, how can we ensure that we ingrain that as a habit and then maintain it? Any secrets you can share with us?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm on a different level in terms of training and stuff, but I actually train twice a day on my lunch break and after work. But even if I wasn't competing at this sport, it's something that I'm going to maintain in terms of setting aside an hour every day for myself. For me, it's just nice to take a break from work, have some time for myself. And when you think about just an hour out of your day, when you think about just being on social media or whatever else, like, you deserve to take some time to focus on your own mental health, get some exercise in. So for me, my favorite time of the day to work out is on my lunch break. So that's when I do it. Some people are morning people. So I would say just set aside some time every day, and that is your time. And there's no excuse for you not to do it. And it's funny, my mom is on the call. She just retired, but she was notorious for being on her computer all day, working from sun up to sundown. I'm like, Mom, you have to take time for yourself. Well, she's like, well, I have to do this, I have to do that. I'm like, well, you have to look at that as a priority as well. So I would say just make a consistent habit of setting some time for yourself aside every day.
And I would go as far to say, Sika, to put it in your calendar for everyone here, literally, especially if you're not a daily person, especially twice a day, definitely if you're planning on doing a certain number of miles per week or something like that, literally put it in your calendar. And Sika, as a pro, she's accountable to her pro license. She has to train. We don't, but we can make it ourselves accountable by sharing our goals with others. So that wellness goal we're talking about, share it with your friends, share it with your family, tell them what you're trying to achieve, tell them how you're going to achieve it by doing X, Y, and Z. And they're going to ask you about it along the way. How's your training going? And you don't want to let them down, right? So accountability is a big one in my book too.
Yeah, I like that. Gretchen just mentioned blocking time in your calendar. So I do work a full-time corporate job, and I actually do block my calendar from 11:30 to 12:30 so that nobody can put meetings on there and it shows that I'm busy. So I agree with that.
Absolutely. Prioritize. Yep. Okay. Our next question takes us back to 2019, Sika. I'm afraid we're going to have to bring that up. You probably get this question all the time. Sika had a pretty tremendous accident back in 19. Unfortunately, in the state I live in Texas, where you can go to her website, which we're instrumental in putting together to learn more about that. But it was a fairly serious accident where it really took her down for quite a while. For others that are facing that kind of situation, and maybe it's not as severe of an accident as yours, maybe it's a severe injury, something like that mentally it does, plague you as much as maybe or close to an accident. Walk us through some advice on what you'd recommend to people that are going through that, both during maybe and then coming out of it, and how it maybe even influenced where you are today.
Right. I would say for me, I had to focus on what I can control and what I could do versus what I couldn't do. One of the hardest things for me after my accident was seeing all my friends race and seeing their posts. They were out there racing and training, and I was on Strava, and I'm seeing everything that they're doing, and I couldn't do anything. And so I think focusing on what you have control over versus what you don't. At the time, my facial injuries were so severe that I couldn't swim. I couldn't put goggles on or anything. But so I had an extra hour to my day just about every other day. So I could actually work on my strength. So I actually hired a strength conditioning coach, and I focused on that, and I added that to my schedule. And then also, I think I needed a break too. Sometimes we don't realize how much we're pushing each other. So sometimes the down period kind of makes you appreciate other things going on in your life. I was able to spend more time with my family. I was able to, after work, shut down and meet up with a friend for dinner, stuff like that I wasn't able to do before. So finding trying to stay busy and filling your life with things that still have a lot of meaning. I would say that, not focus so much on what you don't have control over.
That's a huge one, Sika. And my team knows that I work very hard not to use sports analogies because it's not one of their favorite things, but it's one of mine. Sports analogies are awesome. But I think there's some analogies to being a Rocketeer that you just shared. Control the controllables is one that we talk about quite a bit. And making sure that we all try and advance the ball on the things we can do something about and not get ourselves too wrapped around the axle for the things we can't control. The other thing is, I think you probably showed some great patience when you were coming out of this. You didn't rush your way back into your sport?
Oh, I tried, believe me. My mom, who's on the call, my coach was like, I don't want you walking more than 4 laps around the track. And when I tried to do the 5th lap round, my mom's like, Coach Johnny only said 4, you need to stop. So no, I definitely tried to push myself, but it is really better to, I guess, hold back a little and let yourself fully recover before pushing too hard. So quickly, that's how we end up in a worse situation.
And I think our business has followed that same advice too, that we're trying to smooth this fast, right? But also that Rob and company has introduced sabbaticals to our company. So that rest you were talking about, taking a break from the sport and that kind of thing, we have a program for taking a break from being a Rocketeer even, and finding your extra time to do some of those things you've been needing to do. All right. This next question comes to you from a struggling age grouper that happens to see pros go by him when he's on the run. He sees these amazing pros going the other direction, finishing up their day, and you could look on their faces and see how hard it really is in those last 3 miles. You touched on it a little bit in your last race and on your Instagram post even. Tell us a little bit about, I mean, you're at that point in the race, you are physically exhausted, but yet you're still running at an amazing, and you picked up your pace in your last the last fraction of your run. Tell us about mental toughness. How are you able to tell your mind to shut up and make your body do amazing things like that when all you want to do is walk and stop?
I think about the end result and how disappointed I would be if I do give up, and so my dad came with me and he was at the finish line, and I'm like, all right, if I give up and I don't finish this race or something like that, my dad's night is going to be miserable because I'm just going to be crying the whole night. Our night is going to end a lot differently. And the celebratory drink that I had in mind is not going to be a celebratory drink. It's going to be to help just ease the disappointment of it all. So I actually do think about the end result. But for me, really, when I was struggling, so folks, there were only 15 women in this pro race. And just to be honest, I came in 14th. And I got dropped pretty early on. Out of the swim and then onto the bike. And then even the run, I thought that I had a lot more in me. So I kind of took off at a pace. I thought I was going to run a lot faster than I did. Instead, I wasn't. And my goal was to run a 1:30 half marathon or get under that at the end. And at the pace I was running, I'm like, what am I doing? I saw the pros heading back to the finish line. I was still heading out and I just wanted to walk. But luckily, and maybe not so great, is the fact that I'm the only Black pro out there. So I'm very easy to spot. And a lot of people know my story and they cheered for me. The age groupers were on the other side of the road and they cheered for me as I went by. And I'm like, okay, they're out here suffering too. And if they can muster enough energy to cheer for me, then I need to stop sulking and, put all the energy that I had left into the race. I had already gotten through like 68 miles. It was only 2 or 3 miles left. And I actually did pick up my pace. And I surprisingly did run under 1:30 in the half marathon when it was going sideways. So I think also just realizing that you're capable of more than you realize. At the time, it's just like, oh, no, I give up. But there's always that little extra something in you that if you really dig deep down inside, it's there. And if you ask yourself, how important is this to me, then you'll get there.
I think that last piece right there, folks, says it all, right? And it doesn't have to be sports. It could be anything that you put your heart into, that you have a little bit more to give. You just have to go find it and use it. And make it happen. So that's great advice.
Oh, I will add, I was in 15th place, and that last little bit of energy, I passed the woman in front of me, the pro. So I wasn't last in the field just because of that picked up pace the last mile. I couldn't believe it when I saw her. So, yeah.
Sika, you should know that Rob and I were literally texting each other back and forth during the race, watching your times, doing math, which algebra, we were literally figuring out when you were going to pass in time, You're that other athlete. And so we were having a ball with that. So it was great and any of you, the Ironman app, anytime Sika's racing, get on the Ironman app on your phone and you can track the pros and some age groupers who might be out there soon. So anyway, very, very inspiring, of course. Here's one that applies to everybody in the room, no matter what they're doing, I believe. When trying to embark on a new wellness or athletic journey, some new goal that people have, nutrition plays a big role. And the question is, what is the biggest mistake that you see people making when they're getting into embarking on this new wellness or athletic journey? Nutrition.
Yeah, I would say, I guess fads, those never will seem to last. So think long-term and not immediate.
That's what I wrote.
And having a more substantial goal other than just weight loss, I'd say, think of, I don't know, not something as extreme as a marathon, but even like the consistency that it would take to train for your local 5K with friends or something like that. And you'd be surprised how quickly your lifestyle starts to change to prepare for an event or a goal or something like that. I found when I got into the sport, I started cooking from home. I started making healthier meals because that's what I was craving. I was actually eating more, but I was still maintaining the same weight because I was still active, and just making sure that I was getting certain food groups. Like, I know protein is really important for recovery and stuff like that, or certain foods that make you feel more energetic. So for me, it's actually cutting out as much carbs as I was having during the day, but I wasn't doing it for like weight loss. It was really to feel better. So focus like long-term health and not so much just like fad or just I'm doing this because of a number on a scale.
That's great advice. And you stole my thunder on or the one I wrote down. Fad. Stay away from fad diets or fad or anything that's my coach says if it sounds too good to be true, it's because it's not true. Right? If they claim they can do something miraculous, it's probably not going to happen for you. So don't rely on that. Food is your friend. Use it. And don't abuse it. So number 5, our last one for tonight. And Gretchen has let everyone know that there will be other opportunities to ask questions. So you'll be able to ask again. Sika will be back. But the last one for tonight is a big one. What would you say, Sika, is the biggest challenge, the greatest challenge that athletes face today? It's a changing landscape, but what do you think is one of the greatest challenges they face now?
Probably multitasking and juggling so much and wanting everything immediately. I'm probably talking about myself and not athletes in general. I'm like, I feel this way. Wanting everything quickly and soon and not realizing, that saying, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. I feel like a small fish in a huge pond right now with all of these incredible women that I'm racing against. And I get so mad after a race. I'm like, oh, Danielle ran a 120. Why aren't I running a 120? And, I don't know Danielle's story. I don't know how long I actually found out she ran in the Olympic trials when she was in college. So you don't know the backstory to other people. So probably the number one thing is maybe comparing yourself to others, putting yourself down and not focusing like on your own path and your own journey. Like we all have a story and you shouldn't just like belittle, I guess, your own accomplishments and stuff like that. Like we all have a different path to get to where we're going. And just because it took one person this way doesn't mean that you have to try to replicate theirs. Like be on your own schedule and trust the people that are like in your corner helping you to get to where you are, because it's not going to just happen overnight. I was lucky enough to compete. So my first half Ironman was Ironman 70.3 Eagleman, and it was in 2016. It was my very first one. I was an age grouper. I was still learning the sport. I I don't know. It took me like 6 hours or something like that. Who knows? But I didn't place anywhere close to placing in my age group or anything. And I couldn't have imagined then that years later, this year, I was able to come back to the race and race as a pro. So that's 6 years later. So it can take a while. And yeah, just if you have a goal, stick with it and don't compare yourself to other people.
Terrific advice, Sika. As a matter of fact, with the athletes I coach, I tell them comparison is the thief of joy, right? So, and that applies to everything, not just to athletics and stuff. And I agree too that challenges for me is time, priorities, and trying to go too far too fast, right? And setting your goals too big. I think also right now we also have budget issues in our sport. It's a little tough. So if you're thinking about getting into this type of sport, I'd be happy to talk to you about it offline and tell you how to get into the sport in a low budget way. You don't have to go crazy and buy everything that is necessary just to enjoy the sport. Well, Sika is also very modest, and when she talks about being 14th, everybody. In a particular race, if you were to put her back into her age grouper category, which she was an age grouper not that long ago. She made a huge jump not that long ago. She'd be destroying the field. And that's why she is a pro. So we're very proud of you. And we know that whatever place you come in, what you're doing is amazing stuff. And for those who want to understand what it was like for her to become a pro, I highly recommend that you go to a podcast that's given by Mike Riley. She did this a while back. I was pulling weeds, Sika, so you inspired me to pull weeds faster during that podcast. She spoke to Mike about what it was like it was a two-parter though, right? He came back to you after you became pro. So there's two parts to it, but it's an amazing story for how Sika got to where she is today. An incredible story. So go listen to that so you can get a little bit more of an insight on what it takes to become what Sika's become. Thanks for all your questions, everybody. I'm going to throw it back to the team. Sika, best of luck for the next 6 months of the season. Keep impressing us and love that you're wearing the Rocket.
Yes, I am. And Jeff is modest too. As soon as I heard that he was conducting this and Rob mentioned he was a triathlete, I immediately Googled his first and last name to see what his results were. And I was like, okay, number one, for your age group, I'm like, I hope I can race anywhere near that time in the future. So yeah, so you're modest as well.
Yeah. And with that, back to our program. Thanks for the halftime show.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sika.